Hello, lead class friends. We're going to talk about the law of sacrifice. Um, and so, one of the points that Maxwell addresses in the law of sacrifice is he talks about how there is no leadership without sacrifice, or at least that there is no success without sacrifice. And so, hello, I'm just recording a thing. It's Gabriel. All right, cool. Um, Sorry, this is me outside of Bible 10. So this law of sacrifice it makes me think automatically, because obvious reasons, Jesus, and the sacrifice clearly that he had to um, do in order to accomplish his version of success. Now, one of the things that I did automatically think of after that is him then telling his disciples this statement in John chapter 14. He says to his disciples that they are going to do greater things than he even did. Which is like kind of a trip, right? Is that you're thinking, okay, I'm following Jesus. This is God in the flesh, and he's telling me that I'm going to do greater things than even he was able to do. And what the disciples end up doing is taking the message of Jesus, taking the good news, and taking the sacrifice of Jesus and spreading it all over the world. Now, they all became some pretty phenomenal leaders. However, notice how all of the disciples' lives end. Peter was crucified upside down. James was stoned to death. Gospel writer Mark, he was dragged by a horse until he was dead. Matthew was stabbed to death. The Apostle Paul was beheaded. They did some amazing things. They did the same miracles that Jesus did, but then they had to also pay the price for doing some of those amazing things. And so, as leaders, you got to know that there is no success that you can achieve that won't involve some sort of sacrifice. Now, you might not need to be dragged by a horse until you're dead, but it does mean potentially sacrificing hours. It does mean sacrificing. It does mean sacrificing your energy. It does mean oftentimes sacrificing your own desires and will. That sacrifice is an integral component of what it means to have success, particularly if you define that success like Jesus defined success. Then he also talks about more leadership, or greater leadership comes with greater sacrifice, and automatically I got to think of my homeboy Spider-Man, which this quote, like it's almost like old and tired now, but this idea that with great power comes great responsibility. That if you aspire big and you want to be leading and successful in a very big way, you're going to have to recognize that in order to get there and in order to lead there, it will require a great amount of sacrifice. Right? Even if we think about professional basketball players, or we think about people who reached the top of their career, they didn't get there by like taking it easy, right? They didn't get there by just chilling. They had to sacrifice a great amount. And when I was thinking about our class and think about like all of the wonderful, smart, intelligent, talented people that are in our lead class, it reminded me of a C.S. Lewis quote that is kind of haunting to me in this regard. And this is from Mere Christianity. He says, God judges them by their moral choices. Speaking of people, God judges them by their moral choices. When a neurotic who has a pathological horror of cats forces himself to pick up a cat for some good reason, it's quite possible that in God's eyes, he has shown more courage than a healthy man may have shown in winning the VC. When a man who has been perverted from his youth and taught that cruelty is the right thing does some tiny little kindness, or refrains from some cruelty he might have committed, and thereby perhaps risks being sneered at by his companions, he may in God's eyes be doing more than you and I would do if we gave up life itself for a friend. The line, I guess I didn't copy and paste it right before Mere Christianity, is that we as humans, we judge people by their external actions, their external appearances. But God judges people by their moral choices, meaning what they have done with what they have been given. And good news, bad news. Good news, you guys have been given a lot. You are very talented. You are wonderful human beings. You are intelligent. You have a good community. A lot of you have a lot of things going for you, right? But then the bad news is that you are going to be judged for what you do with that. right? You're going to be judged by what you've done with those resources, with that intelligence, with that power, with that good upbringing, with this awesome Christian school that you go to. And so when we think about um, leadership and its relationship with sacrifice, you also need to remember that your sacrifice will need to be reflective, at least in the eyes of God, reflective of what you've been given, right? It might look like you're sacrificing a lot sometimes, but if something's actually really easy for you, you're probably not sacrificing that much. Whereas, like, for one person, like giving up a penny might be really, really difficult. But for you who has millions, maybe you giving a penny is significantly easier. So realizing that, like, recognizing your talents and abilities, and not comparing yourself to others in regards to sacrifice, but just knowing that, basically knowing your talents and abilities, you need to sacrifice proportionally. And then I think that what a lot of us, especially with like the advent of YouTube fame and TikTok fame and a lot of these other things that you can make you famous, sometimes it seems like you work your way to the top, and then once you're there, you got the easy life, right? But the truth about like any meaningful, lasting success and any meaningful, lasting leadership is that you cannot get to the top and hit the cruise control button. You cannot get to, like, it's not like you work your way to the top and then all of a sudden you have like open freeways, and you can just do whatever you want, but rather that sacrifice needs to continue to be part of your life, right? You sacrifice a lot to get to somewhere, but then sacrifice becomes integrated into who you are. And you have to consistently keep up with that. So if in your mind you're like, I'm going to work hard and sacrifice and get to this thing so that I can kick back, relax, and let all the people that I lead do all the work for me, that's not how it works. That the leaders are the ones who have to continue sacrificing. And last, the cost of leadership. He talks about how the higher and more powerful, the more, I guess, the higher the level of your leadership, the more responsibilities that you have, which means the more sacrifice that you have. Which is why I think is probably really important, especially in our class. I think leadership is the buzzword and it looks really good on a college application, but you're not, but being in a leadership class doesn't make you a leader, right? I think we need to realize that if we are actually going to be good leaders, then it does mean that that cannot be removed from sacrifice. That the higher we work in leadership, the more sacrifice is demanded, right? Because not only do you have to worry about yourself and if you're doing your part of the job, but you're also thinking about the example that you're setting. Think about all of those other laws of leadership. The idea you have to be the one who's casting vision. You're the one who is hopefully holding down the fort on morality for your organization. You're the one who has to model authenticity, right? If someone at the lowest level of your organization messes up, like, it might not be catastrophic, but if you do, it could send the whole thing into pieces. And so as you increase in leadership, it increases in responsibilities, which automatically means that there is an increase of sacrifice. And so you guys, if we want, especially as Christians who follow Jesus, if we want to be good leaders, then we follow his model of sacrificial leadership. Not leading so that we can lord it over other people, but leading in such a way that we realize that we are the ones who need to be the first to lay ourselves down. All right, have a good rest of your class. I'll see you guys on the flip side.